Canada started out small, just around the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence River. Our first Prime Minister, Sir John A. Macdonald, dreamed big. He wanted Canada to stretch from coast to coast to coast, like the Russian Empire. But there was a catch. British Columbia, all the way out on the west coast, wouldn't join Canada without a railway connecting it to the rest of the nation. Building that railway meant buying a massive chunk of land called Ruperts Land from the Hudson's Bay Company. The British Crown ended up taking it back from the company, and then Canada bought it in 1870. This was a big deal because the United States also had its eyes on Ruperts Land. After their Civil War, they were all about expanding territory, and Canada was worried about manifest destiny and needed to protect the new land. And the best way to do that was to get people from Canada to settle there. But settling the land wasn't easy. There were Indigenous people who weren't happy about newcomers, and Canada didn't have the military power to deal with that like the U.S. did in their territories. Plus, to attract settlers, Canada needed law and order. And that's where the idea for a mounted police force came in, similar to the Irish Constabulary. The Red River Rebellion in 1870 showed why they would need this. The government sent out some folks to check out the situation, and they came back saying that yes, a police force would be needed. And they suggested that these police wear red uniforms so they would not be mistaken for American soldiers. Then something happened that made it even more urgent. The Cypress Hills Massacre. That was the final straw. The government couldn't wait any longer. And in August of 1873, the Northwest Mounted Police were officially born. Picture this. 300 men, green as grass, about to become the legendary Northwest Mounted Police. They were to be split up into 6 groups of 50, troops A through F, names that still echo today. The powers that be rounded up officers first, and then they started the hunt for the recruits. Divisions A, B, and C filled up fast in Collingwood, Ontario, but they weren't very picky. Many of the men who enlisted had never even held a rifle, let alone ridden a horse. The first group was to march a grueling 880 kilometers to Lower Fort Garry along the old Dawson Trail. Meanwhile, they picked up a commissioner, a man named George Arthur French. He had cut his teeth in the Irish Constabulary, the model for the NWMP. At Lower Fort Garry, 2 seasoned officers, Sam Steele and James Walsh, were handed the reins to whip those rookies into shape. Imagine drilling from dawn till way past dusk, 6 to 10 every single day. For 2 solid months after making that trek, they pushed those recruits hard. But then the winter hit, that bitter prairie cold, and all the progress melted away like snow in the sun. When French showed up, his first order of business was to ban booze. And then as the winter dragged on, a number of the trainees got the boot, quit, or just vanished. They ended up back at square one, having to recruit more men. Now, while those poor souls were freezing their butts off in what is now Manitoba, the other 150 recruits were living it up in Toronto. They even got to take the train all the way to Fargo in the Dakota Territory before trekking 340 kilometers north to Fort Dufferin. Now, for a mounted police force, they needed horses. At first, the plan was to train wild mustangs, the kind that are already used to scrounging for food on the prairies. The problem was, they're a nightmare. And French wasn't having anything of that. He ordered a whole herd of thoroughbreds instead, along with enough feed for them. Now, after all the trials and tribulations, the entire force would finally gather for the first time on June 19th, 1874, at Fort Dufferin. The next day, one of the worst storms in the history of Manitoba.
A thunderbolt fell in the midst of the horses. Terrified, they broke their fastening and made for the corral. The 6 men on guard were trampled underfoot as they tried to stop them. The maddened beasts overturned the huge wagons, dashed through the row of tents, scattered everything, and made for the gate of the large field in which they were encamped. In a mad effort to pass, they climbed over one another to the height of many feet. The stampede continued south across the Pembina Bridge. Crazed with fright, the horses crossed the river and continued on their flight on the opposite bank, and the majority was between 50 and 80 kilometers in Dakota before they were compelled by sheer exhaustion to halt. Sam Steele.
The aftermath of the storm brought a flurry of activity as the countdown to the westward journey began. Supplies trickled in steadily from the Southern Boundary Commission, including sacks of flour to sustain the men on their long ride. However, a crucial element was missing: a replacement for a massive quantity of oats that had been lost during the perilous river crossing from Fargo. The thoroughbred horses, already accustomed to a diet of grains, would need that nourishment for the arduous journey ahead. On the 8th of July, a grand spectacle unfolded as 300 men, adorned in their woolen jackets, sturdy breeches, leather boots and gloves, and iconic pith helmets, assembled for the expedition. The column was a vibrant tableau stretching back for an impressive 3 kilometers. Alongside the mounted men, a small herd of cattle ambled along, providing sustenance for the journey. 2 imposing 9-pounder artillery pieces rumbled over the terrain, a testament to the potential dangers that lay ahead. A seemingly endless train of 73 wagons laden with supplies followed in the wake of the riders. The distinctive Red River carts with their wooden wheels and buffalo hide coverings added a touch of local flavor to the procession. As the sun glinted off their polished metal fittings, the carts creaked and groaned under the weight of their cargo, a symphony of anticipation for the uncharted territories that awaited. Thank you for traveling alongside me. If these stories have sparked a question, a memory, or just a newfound fascination, let's keep the conversation going. Share your thoughts in the comments, subscribe for more hidden histories, and give us a like if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you for listening to Canadian History with Stephen Wilson.